Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Well, I have my cat eating behind me and I have two others sleeping beside me, but we're gonna cross our fingers and hope that they make minimal noise while I record this, but I make no promises because when they're hungry, they let us know. Today, we are diving into a full review of Meghan Markle's recent appearance on Aspire, the podcast hosted by Gemma Grede. This episode was meant to give us a deeper look into Meghan's journey as a founder, as a female founder, her mindset behind launching American Riviera, or no, as ever, I'm sorry, the confusion, it's still there. I guess that's what happens when you change your brand name 2 weeks before launch. And her so-called entrepreneurial spirit, whatever that means. But if you've been following Meghan's media trail like I have, you will notice that a lot of what she says feels recycled, inconsistent, and at times downright hard to believe. It seems like she's lying. So in this video, I'm breaking things down section by section because trust me, there is a lot to unpack. I have just finished listening to it. I have my notes here beside me, and from questionable childhood anecdotes once again to our favorite buzzwords as a mother.
As a mother.
Female founder.
Female founder.
Authentic, organic.
Authentic. Authentic and organic.
There are some pretty big glaring contradictions along the way, and this episode gives us a glimpse into Meghan's world. And once again, in my opinion, it doesn't quite add up. Let's get into it. So the podcast kicks off with host Emma asking Meghan Markle where her entrepreneurial drive comes from. Was there someone in her family who inspired it? And Meghan's response is telling. She completely skips over her father and siblings because, well, we know for the past maybe 7 years they no longer exist, apparently, seemingly because her father took photos she didn't like, even though she allegedly does the exact same thing, but no mention of them. And instead she brings up her maternal grandfather, who apparently ran an antique store. And this is where I believe Meghan's imagination enters the picture. She says she used to go there after school and watch him work.
Oh, goodness. My grandfather on my mom's side, he used to have an antique store. And I would always be, oftentimes, after school with him, helping with his antiques and watching what it's like to, just be in business and also customer service.
Mm-hmm. The reason why I believe this isn't true is because here we are again. It's another new anecdote about a job she supposedly had in her youth. With each interview Meghan does, she seems to unveil a different origin story.
So I grew up on the set of Married with Children every day after school for 10 years. I was there.
Wow.
I know. It's a very perverse place for a little girl who went to Catholic school, no less, to grow up. Because I'm there in my school uniform, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then the guests...
On the Drew Barrymore show, she was babysitting for Catholic families.
When I was a babysitter nanny for 2 Irish Catholic families.
On Jamie Kern-Lima's podcast, she worked at a frozen yogurt shop.
My first job was when I was 13 at a frozen yogurt shop called Humphrey Yogurt.
And now she's watching over an antique store and selling homemade scrunchies in 5th grade for $1 a piece.
I would buy, with my allowance, just sort of the overstock. You can buy like 1 yard at a time. And I started using my own sewing machine. I would make scrunchies. So when I was about 5th, 6th grade, I was selling scrunchies for $1 a piece at school.
Funded by her allowance, of course. And I wonder who gave her that allowance. No mention of her father. Now, do I believe Meghan is ambitious? Absolutely. Do I think that's a bad thing? Not at all. But hardworking? That's harder to buy. Especially given how often she seems to just quit and under-deliver on her projects, which I want you to remember that point because this podcast is full of contradictions and that comes up later and it's really interesting. But before I digress, we'll stick to section by section. There is this pattern of reinvention in her interviews, and this interview is no exception. But it's not the type of, let's say, reinvention that feels at all even grounded in truth. These stories, to me, feel curated and not lived. They feel rehearsed. It seems like she has thought about these and these are her talking points, because Meghan always has talking points in her interviews. Whether she realizes or not, it comes across as if she's rehearsed what she wanted to say. When the conversation moves to the beginning of her lifestyle brand, as ever, Meghan trots out the usual buzzwords: authentic, organic, sharing something meaningful with the world. So who knew rabbit food was so meaningful? And when I say rabbit food, I'm referring to her flour sprinkles. But if you've followed her career, inverted commas, closely, those words start to ring hollow. She's not authentic. I don't believe she's authentic. I think she's strategic. And if this brand was something she truly wanted to put out into the world, why did it take 4 years to figure it out? I mean, she, once again, in this interview, alludes to the royal family or her time, at that time, losing her voice. But she left in 2020. So what the hell is she doing for from 2020 to 2024 when she announced American Riviera Orchard? What was she doing? She had her voice. So it's just, honestly, she talks so much bullcrap. It's hard to listen to. Let's not forget, by the way, she had, in that time, high-value contracts with Netflix and Spotify. Maybe if she had focused more on those commitments instead of bouncing between projects and image reinventions, they wouldn't have failed. And I know some people argue Netflix hasn't failed because she's still with them. We know Spotify has, and we know that Bill Simmons called her and Harry effing grifters. But Netflix has not been a success. The only success they had is the reality show where they were trashing the royal family. Everything else has been a failure. Even with Love Meghan, in comparison, those numbers are a quarter of what they got when they were trashing the royal family. So it is a failure. It is. Nothing has been higher than them airing dirty laundry, and people got sick of it because it's really ugly. And family is a universal concept because we all come from a mother. We're all born from a mother and a father, even if they're not in our lives. Family is a universal concept. So the idea that they were just shitting on everyone really put people off. And here she is yet again trying to reinvent herself and make her seem like she's this person that I believe she's not. We've seen the real Meghan. It's vindictive, in my opinion. It's vengeful, and she's not a truth teller. So it's really hard to watch these interviews from my perspective and not have that in mind. It's weird to think someone can flip-flop and show you these two drastically different personalities. One is either out for revenge, in my opinion, or just, I'm just looking to bring joy into the world. It doesn't work. But let's continue. I'm just taking a look at my notes here. Yes, okay. Meghan never mentions the word failure herself, unless she's asked about it. She seems to prefer revisionism. So telling us she was quietly planning something all along. She also claims it was obvious she would go into fashion or beauty. And I'm left asking, to whom? Whom was this obvious to? Meghan's not exactly known for her style. I mean, I'm not saying she looks bad, but if you are in fashion and beauty as a business, you cannot show up in wrinkled clothes. You cannot show up in things that are oversized. You cannot be wearing high heels that don't fit you. You cannot be over bronzed and have your makeup look really strange. That's just my opinion. It doesn't matter who you are. It's not just that it's Meghan. Meghan, to me, is not known for being a fashionista or anything really with makeup. I mean, I don't know. I don't see it personally. Her wardrobe, like I said, seems to be ill-fitting, oversized. Look at the Time 100 summit she did a few weeks ago. Wrinkled. I can put in lots of photos here to show you evidence of that. And often unflattering because her body shape is... how would I phrase this? And this isn't shaming. We all have different bodies. But Meghan has extremely thin limbs. And then I would consider Meghan an apple shape. Now, she's very thin, but she is an apple shape. You can tell when she gains weight, she gains it on her stomach. That's fine. But her limbs are incredibly thin. And sometimes she dresses her body that even I, a person who has no connection to fashion, but I just have eyes, I can see it doesn't suit her body shape. And she tries to wear things that I think she thinks they look good, but they just don't. I mean, there are times where she has looked really good, don't get me wrong. In fact, I do like her outfit in this podcast, the navy blue. She looks good. So I can't fault her on that. But there's a difference between now and again looking good and making that a business, says I. So the reason why I mentioned that in this interview, she's basically trying to convince us, implies that it is coming, that there was a clear path when really there wasn't.
What do I authentically, organically want to share? Because I do believe it was probably more obvious to a lot of people that I would get into fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And the icing on the cake, she claims she thought about launching her brand I'm talking about as ever, at local farmers markets. But that contradicts what she said at the Time 100 Summit, that it was a Netflix executive who inspired her brand direction. They were in the kitchen and she said, there's an idea here.
One day Bella said, there's a show here.
And Meghan's story changes because later she says she sent a gift basket and someone said,
I'd love to know, I want to understand, like, how did it start?
Truth be told, I had just been making a lot of jams and preserves at home and sharing them as holiday gifts with a lot of friends. And it was one morning, beginning of the new year, so many friends at the same time had texted saying, I don't know what it is, but your jams just make me so happy. And I thought, maybe that's the thing.
Again, the story kind of changes. So I don't know which one to believe. Was it the farmer's market? Were you in the kitchen with Ted's wife? Was it a friend who received a gift basket? Too many different stories and trying to convey it as the same origin story. So which is it? It's another case of too many versions of the same event. Then we have, further on in the episode, Meghan begins to reflect on the scrutiny she faces. And for a brief moment, I thought we might be getting a rare bit of honesty. She acknowledges the intense pressure, the media attention, and yes, she's right. There's no two ways about it. Meghan does receive a lot of scrutiny, but you always have to ask why. It's not like it's for no reason. This is a person who has publicly tried to take down a long-standing institution in the UK. And on top of that, that's her family, her in-laws. And she did that in a way that wasn't honest. She, according to CNN, was lying about many things in that interview. I just think until she sets that right and acknowledges what she did, the spotlight will continue to be on her in a negative way. There is a spotlight on her, but just when it feels like she's about to own something real, she pivots. And if you wanted Meghan to take accountability in this interview, oh boy, you are in for a rude awakening, because she decides to, what I would consider, gaslight the public. But we'll get on to that later. I do want to stick and kind of go in order of the interview. So that does come a little bit later. But she says about her business and about the scrutiny, I'm never willing to sacrifice or compromise on quality, when she's talking about her as ever products. And that line made me stop, because if you've read any of the public reviews or watched them, even from outlets that are Sussex friendly, like Us Weekly, who've done many puff pieces on her, the reviews about As Ever products have been mixed, if I'm being polite, and terrible, if I'm being honest. And again, I can put in clips here to show you exactly what I mean.
While Meghan Markle's As Ever product line completely sold out, many, including myself, were wondering if that highly anticipated jam lived up to the hype. Well, the reviews are in, and they are a bit mixed. Now, some have started calling it scam jam on social media, while others have referred to it as more of a spread. Now, one reviewer for the Daily Mail claimed that the product was watery when open, which led to questions about how the product traveled. Another TikTok user referred to it as the perfect sour jam, and another said it was so sweet that it should be used for desserts. Meanwhile, over on X, users have echoed the claims that it looks more like a sauce, with one going so far as to say that it looks like a jar of high fructose corn syrup and food coloring. Hey, I guess it's not everybody's jam.
The biggest scandal wasn't the branding. The branding wasn't the problem. The packaging, any of that. It was the quality. The jam, or spread, whatever, was reportedly sour and runny, more like a sauce than a spread. These are real comments that you can find. You can find if you type it into YouTube, Google, whatever. The cookies were one of the better products, but they were overpriced. The flour sprinkles have been described as rabbit food, and the tea, the mint one, was described as tasting like toothpaste. And that was just one of the teas. Other teas as well weren't favourable. Multiple reviewers called it undrinkable, horrible flavour, bitter and flat. So when Meghan says she won't compromise on quality, it doesn't match reality. It rewrites it, in my opinion. She claims that With Love Meghan marks a new chapter for Netflix too, which feels like a generous interpretation. God, Meghan has a very good ability to, honestly, I would say, invent things, in my opinion. Considering the actual situation that we all know, Netflix seems to be standing by her more out of personal loyalty than performance. She even alludes to this later. She says she has really good friendships with Netflix, or the people in Netflix. So let's be honest, you are there because you are friends, We cannot forget Meghan has been friends with Ted's wife for years. Anyone else, literally anyone who had delivered so little in 5 years would have been dropped by now when you think of Netflix. Harry and Meghan, the deal has been literally labelled one of the worst media deals in decades. And yet she's still there. They have had flop after flop after flop. And it's incredible. And it's taken 5 years. This isn't a business decision. To me, it sounds like a favour. They're my opinions. Then finally, she says something that almost makes sense. In season 2 of With Love Meghan, the products will reflect what's offered in the show. That's what should have been happening since season 1. That's how a lifestyle brand works. Meghan literally, she doesn't make sense. What her plan for season 2 is to have the products finally be in the show. Why weren't they in season 1? You dropped the podcast and the show and As Ever all together. All of that should have been working in unison, and it didn't. The podcast was a guise. It was not you trying to tell us, your journey on building it. That's not true at all. You spent more time trying to convince us you were pregnant than anything, in my opinion. And then, on top of that, we had With Love Meghan that featured no As Ever products. None. Nothing at all. And now she says that she's working to incorporate it into season 2. I'm not even a business person, but business interests me. But even I know that's how a lifestyle brand works. Instead of using the show as a springboard to highlight what she's selling, season 1 gave us vague aesthetics, terrible reviews, very little substance, and no integration, no alignment. But even in this admission, she's not transparent, because Meghan doesn't say, I didn't prepare properly. She doesn't own the disconnect. She just phrases it like it was an intentional creative choice, which we know isn't true. She didn't plan this correctly. If she had planned it correctly, the products would have been ready with the show. And let's talk about her saying, nobody can rush me. She basically says that somebody else being in a rush doesn't rush her. And that is rich, considering reports from early 2025 claimed she was absolutely rushed, allegedly pushed to release With Love Meghan on time, only for the LA fires to give her an excuse to delay it until March. And even then, the products weren't ready. The first launch didn't come until April, a full month after the show aired. That's not strategy. That seems to me to be last-minute scrambling dressed up as this artistic control. And it's not. Once again, I don't know why Meghan does these honest podcast interviews when she, to me, is not being honest about what happened. At one point in the conversation, Gemma Grede, who clearly understands business. By the way, Emma, I really like Emma. She comes across really well. She has a great personality. She's very honest. I like her. She also asks great questions. She presses Meghan a little bit on how the partnership between her and Netflix actually works. Emma likes to know details, and I think that's great. And you can tell she knows her business by the questions she's asking. And there's a huge contrast between Emma's podcast and Meghan's podcast, because Meghan would ask the most stupid questions, in my opinion. How did it make you feel? Like, just stuff like this. Or, do you think you need to know yourself first and then build your business? Just stuff that you're like, nobody's asking. Nobody's asking this. And the answer is either too obvious or too stupid. But with Emma, she specifically asked Meghan, what are you doing yourself versus what is Netflix doing? How do you manage it? Essentially, what responsibility do they have and what do you have? The division of tasks. Meghan dodges. She ignores the question. If you actually listen to the podcast, she doesn't answer it. And instead, she kind of pivots to how close she is with Ted Sarandos. It's the weirdest thing ever. And that's the second time this episode that Meghan leans on personal friendships instead of professional qualifications. But Emma circles back and asks again. Although she's completely friendly, by the way. Emma is not confrontational. She has a way about her that's very good. Obviously, she's really good with people. But she does ask the question again because Meghan didn't answer. And this time, Meghan finally says, they understand this is my vision, and the success of the brand is rooted in the fact that you can feel when I'm involved in something. That's her answer. Let's break that down. First, she still doesn't clearly answer the question. It sounds like she's saying she's involved, but only when she wants to be. That's what I understand. And second, the phrase, you can feel when I'm involved, is frankly ridiculous. How exactly does a consumer feel Meghan's involvement when they open a jar of what I have heard is factory produced flour sprinkles. I mean, allegedly, this is not Meghan in her kitchen putting things in packets. There's footage of her products being produced in what looks like factories. Or take a bag of cookies, the cookie mix that she sold. How can reviewers feel Meghan was involved in that? These alleged mass-produced items. I don't understand what she's talking about. Also, the idea that the brand has been a success is laughable to me. The product reviews were and are overwhelmingly negative. Meghan's popularity is reportedly lower than ever, even in the US, and the launch itself was a mess. So when she calls it a success, it feels more to me like self-delusion. Then Meghan says Netflix trusts her final judgment. So maybe they're smoking a little something, if that's the truth. No, I'm joking. But she has a metaphor or an analogy she likes to use, which is, don't bake the cake without me. And this is exactly what she says. She wants to help to decide the flavor profile and be there to make the batter, even though a full team, even according to her, puts it in the oven. It's her analogy, but ironically, it just reinforces to me how minimal her actual involvement seems. She even casually mentions that she's one of the people who checks the newsletter. Can you believe that, guys? Meghan actually checks the newsletter. She doesn't write it. She doesn't think of the idea, but she checks it. I mean, that to me is translation. Her team runs most of it and she pops in at the last minute with feedback. And according to reports, her and Harry are not good bosses. I've just made a video about this, so check it out. But my point is, it's probably because of the system they've created. I'm speculating, but this whole not just letting good people do their jobs and trusting you've hired good people, it seems to be, the people will do the work and then she pops up and then messes everything up at the end. That's just my opinion. And that's a problem. Meghan appears to be a classic top-down manager, not leading the charge. Otherwise, they've just parted with 6 other staff members. The question is why. But she seems to swoop in at the end to assert control. And there are reports allegedly Meghan is a control freak. She wants to be involved in everything. But from what we've seen, her version of involvement doesn't lead to coherent results. Look at everything they have produced. Control doesn't equal quality, especially when execution is messy. And Meghan's execution is so messy. Name change at the last minute. Announcing a brand, a soft launch, a year in advance. Even with Spotify, they allowed an ad to go out 6 months before the actual podcast dropped. Later, she even refers to Netflix as a machine, a powerful, influential machine. And I'm left questioning, because she's right, it is. Yet despite having this powerhouse backing her, how is it that As Ever still feels like a struggling passion project with a pretty Instagram filter slapped on it? Because she's right, she has the biggest powerhouse behind her. Same with the royal family. And she still fails. She's still failing, I would argue. Emma, once again, proving how grounded she is, asks Meghan for a third time about division of labour. Answer the question, Meghan. Does Meghan let her partner handle the finances, for example? And Meghan says she needs to be involved. And honestly, that might be part of the problem. Meghan's need to micromanage may be contributing to the brand's dysfunction, if it's true that she is micromanaging, because it sounds like she is. When you try to control everything, you slow down everything. Look, I'm sure we've all worked in places where we had an annoying manager, a micromanager, and it added nothing. It added nothing. And also, we've seen Meghan's failures play out in real time. Emma also brings up real operational concerns. She talks about her own business and she questions, how fast are my clients or my customers getting their delivery? How easy is it for them to essentially navigate the website? And Meghan agrees, as if she's thinking of that kind of stuff. But we already know from customer complaints that delivery has allegedly been slow and in some cases non-existent with As Ever. Some buyers claim they still haven't received their products. And we're talking about weeks later. And then comes the moment that made me physically cringe. Meghan says she wants to go global because it's the spirit of sharing.
You're going global.
How can we not?
I mean, how can you not?
Yeah, but it's the spirit of sharing. I don't want to just share it here. I want to share
It's
it.
better for the P&L. Well, there is that, Meghan.
This is the same woman who cut off most of her family, her own family, as well as her in-laws. dropped friends without explanation, and reportedly, allegedly bullied staff to the point of therapy. They needed therapy, according to Vanity Fair. Hearing her talk about sharing in this syrupy, spiritual way just feels false. I don't believe her. I think she's over the top. She's performative. Emma, bless her, cuts through the fluff with a perfectly dry response and says, well, it's better for the P&L, so there's that. And just like that, reality makes a brief cameo, because going global will make sure that you are making more money. Let's be honest, Meghan. That's the truth. You want more money. I would too. We all do. So don't act like going global is because you want to share. She's just so full of... Okay, the next part is to do with imposter syndrome. So earlier in the episode, Meghan tells us that fashion and beauty just aren't her thing. She says she doesn't live that life.
That's not what I was sitting around doing every day. And so my real passion was in this way of sharing.
Okay, so she didn't start fashion and beauty because that's not the life she lives. Essentially, it's not her passion. She doesn't live it every day. She doesn't spend her free time in that world. Okay, fair enough. Very honest answer. So when Emma asks her if she ever considered launching a business in fashion or beauty, you would think the answer would be a clear no, because she already mentioned in the intro, in the very first part of that podcast, that she doesn't live that life. But instead, Meghan says that people have asked her about it and there will be a time for fashion, she tells us. So I'm left wondering, as an audience, as a viewer, as an audience member, what happened to not living that life? So this is textbook Meghan. Say one thing, then contradict it a few minutes later, dressed up in slightly different language. It's more brand fog than brand vision, because either you don't live that life and fashion and beauty is not for you, or yeah, you know what, it was an option, but I decided to go with, food instead of fashion and beauty, but maybe I'll pivot later. That would have been a more honest answer. But at the start, she says, I don't live that life. So then why would you open a fashion brand later, possibly? It doesn't make sense. Then comes one of the most absurd quotes of the episode. Meghan says, I don't care who you are. Everyone is charmed by jam. Meghan, I think you need to get out of your privileged life, because you have a multi-million-dollar Montecito estate and you really think that people, let's say, working 2 jobs, raising 3 kids, are out here being charmed by jam. I was just so charmed by the jam, I said, I'll be late for work, my second job. It's the kind of comment that shows just how out of touch she is. No, Meghan, not everyone is sitting around romanticizing artisanal preserves while trying to pay rent. It's not cute, it's cringe. Then Emma throws her a question that could have added real depth to the conversation. She asks her, do you ever suffer from imposter syndrome? Meghan answers immediately, I don't. I mean, literally, no, I don't. Directly.
Is there any part of you that feels any sense of imposter syndrome? Do you ever sit back and get overwhelmed by how big the opportunity is and then, pedal back from anything that might be?
I don't.
And that was the funniest moment of the entire podcast, because one of the most common public critiques of Meghan that I see is that she does seem like an imposter. She has been called a grifter by Bill Simmons.
People should expect the real me in this, and probably the me that they've never gotten to know.
Well, Spotify exec Bill Simmons, who also has his own podcast, apparently got to know Harry and Meghan a little bit during their time at the streaming service.
The grifters. That's the podcast we should have launched with them.
Commenters constantly call her out for lacking authenticity. So to hear her say, without a second of hesitation, that she has never experienced imposter syndrome is almost too on the nose. And I'll give you an example, a perfect example of imposter syndrome. Meghan claims she speaks Spanish. And she does. She speaks it a little bit. Would I say she speaks it very well? Meh, not really. Does she speak it horribly? No, not at all. She's doing fine. Fine for, let's just say, beginner intermediate level. And the reason why I bring that up is with languages, there is a stage where you have imposter syndrome. So to say that she never, ever, ever, without hesitation, has imposter syndrome in any area of her life, seemingly, nor with languages, to me isn't true. Anyone who's learned a second language, if you have been in a room with other people speaking that language and you still don't feel comfortable in it, there is this sense of imposter syndrome. You know what I mean? They're talking about something and you feel like you're in an environment that you can't fully navigate. So I just wanted to bring, even though she doesn't mention languages, I'm just saying there are many areas in our life where we feel imposter syndrome. And the fact that she directly said no shows me one of two things. A, she's lying, or B, she's narcissistic. It's got to be one of those. She explains later on that she enjoys having a strong team and being able to guide that team. But if that's true, then why are staff leaving left and right? In a video I recently made, I covered that 6 more staffers have reportedly parted ways with Harry and Meghan, bringing the total up to at least 22 people reportedly since they arrived in the US. Allegedly. That's not leadership. That's a red flag. Then Meghan references what seems to be her time in the royal family, saying she's navigated bigger things in her life. And that is just another chapter. You know, I'm just in a different chapter of my life. Again, vague allusions and no accountability. She fails to mention the lies that she told on Oprah. She also says the word, once again, that I hate. For anyone who's listened to this, to my channel, you'll know when I did reviews of Confessions of a Female Founder, Meghan used the word learns, which doesn't exist. And it really, really irritates me. All the learns I've had, it's not a word, Meghan. Stop trying to make learns a word. It's so annoying. It's just incorrect grammar.
That is so fetch. Gretchen, stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
To top it off, Meghan gives a completely incorrect definition of imposter syndrome. She says, imposter syndrome is when you posture as if you know everything. That's not what imposter syndrome is, Meghan. At all. At all. Imposter syndrome is the feeling that you are not qualified or deserving of your success, even if you are. It's about self-doubt. It's not about pretending. It's a feeling of doubt in yourself. So what and it's so telling. She said no direct to that question because she thinks imposter syndrome is something else. And it's so telling because I believe the definition Meghan thinks imposter syndrome is exactly what she does. That's my opinion. She says imposter syndrome is when you posture as if you know everything. And I would argue Meghan does. That's my opinion. But that's not what imposter syndrome is. It's not. Emma then wisely says that a good leader finds great people and, here's the key, gets out of their way. Meghan nods and agrees, of course, as if she does this, but in my opinion, she doesn't. But let's be honest, it's probably the very thing she struggles with. Meghan doesn't strike me as someone who gets out of the way. And that's likely why so many people are walking away. It's definitely one of the options, I would argue. Emma brings up Meghan's launch of, as ever, but I guess the launch of American Riviera Orchard because of the name change, and how the products reportedly sold out in 45 minutes. It's one of the most interesting parts to me of the conversation, not because Meghan's answer, because we know Meghan's not a truth teller exactly, but because of Emma's framing. Emma, who I told you, she genuinely is savvy. She's very intelligent. I like her a lot. She casually mentions the idea of fueling scarcity. So Emma knows the tricks of the trade, and she talks about it as a business tactic. So she literally says fueling scarcity as a business tactic, which, to be fair, isn't a bad strategy, is what she says. And I'm wondering, I'm going to try and put it in here. Meghan's face is this expressionless, cold. You can tell she doesn't like that Emma has brought up what I believe Meghan did.
But you basically sold out of everything in about 45 minutes. Listen, I can't get you on that one because I don't know a business that I've had where, you know, a couple of hours in, every single thing has been gone.
Everything.
But it comes with a lot, right? That comes with this, you know, of course, you end up kind of fueling that idea of scarcity in your business, which is a great thing. It's never terrible to disappoint customers.
Meghan, she's so obvious in her facial expressions because she'll either give this huge performative and smiles, and later on, I'm going to put in a clip when it comes to Instagram of the one time I actually think Meghan, her eyes light up. I'll put it in later. But when somebody mentions something she doesn't like, her jaw kind of clenches. She gives this absolute blank expression. If anybody remembers the CBS interview with Jane Pauley, it's kind of like that. It's like this, how could you even mention that? That kind of look. I'm going to have to put it in here. My point is, let's get back to this. Sorry. So she mentions that, and basically creating limited supply can build hype. But Meghan, like I said, she doesn't look pleased by this suggestion at all. It's as if the idea that the sellout was intentional undermines her preferred narrative, and that it wasn't just all organic, as she says. Meghan says that word a lot in this interview. Authentic, magical. So when Emma asks if the sellout was planned, Meghan calls it a beautiful surprise.
Was it planned? I mean, did you plan to actually?
No, no.
Okay.
It was a beautiful surprise.
Just an amazing surprise.
But let's be honest, nobody believes that. Well, I don't believe that. Especially not when you consider how tightly controlled and curated every aspect of Meghan's public image is she doesn't do surprise. She does strategy, in my opinion, even if she pretends otherwise. Meghan claims she had the option to restock and sell out again, but she chose not to. These are her words, okay? I encourage you all to watch the podcast, make your own opinion about it. There's too many contradictions here. So she says, like I said, she chose not to restock after selling out in 45 minutes. Why? Well, because she says she doesn't want the pattern to repeat. It would be too fatiguing. Fatiguing? For whom? For her? For the customer? If your product is flying off shelves, then there is a clear demand. Why wouldn't you restock it? I don't understand. If there's demand, you supply. She says, fair expose from January 2025, it laid out the same patterns of alleged bad behaviour and bullying and arrogance that were reported back in the UK 7 years ago, 7 years prior, up until 2020. That's when they were in the UK. When I'm talking about, they were in the UK longer, but that's the period of bullying allegations that came out in the UK. Then we have this alleged bad behaviour happening from 2020 to 2025, according to Vanity Fair. The same accusations, the same stories, the same alleged bad behaviour, just now in Hollywood instead of Kensington Palace. So when Meghan says she learns from failure, it raises the question to me, what exactly has she learned? Because the evidence suggests otherwise. Staff keep leaving. Staff allegedly keep needing therapy. So, again, I don't know why Meghan does these podcasts. It reveals too many contradictions in her story, in my opinion. Moving to the next part, Emma, let's give her credit, pushes again on the imposter syndrome theme, and this time reframing it. She says, so many entrepreneurs feel imposter syndrome and fear they'll fail. She even says most of the people she interviews feel this. And she asks Meghan, what in your life has happened that you don't feel that way? And it's an honest, thought-provoking question. If most people feel that way, why is Meghan the exception? And if Meghan were honest, in my opinion, look, I'd answer it for her. This is my answer for Meghan. I believe she doesn't feel imposter syndrome because she's driven by narcissistic tendencies. Grandiosity is the armor, and when you believe you are above reproach, when you've built an entire brand on your own self-mythology, there's no room for doubt, and it's only performance. And that's what I believe. That's just my opinion. I believe Meghan doesn't feel imposter syndrome because, in my opinion, Meghan is narcissistic. But let's see what Meghan actually answers with. I have the quote written down, words matter. And yes, Meghan, they do. I agree. So maybe you should be more careful when you falsely accuse your in-laws of the R word over your son's title, when in reality everyone with even a basic understanding of royal protocols knows that the titles come with the monarch's death. That accusation carried global weight and she's never walked it back. No apology, no correction, just on to the next narrative. For somebody to say words matter, you don't live by your own mottos, Meghan. And it again, these podcasts just reveal too many negatives in you. Then she pivots into talking about her acting career and says that before Suits, this is the biggest bull S I've heard in my life. Even Emma doesn't believe her. Meghan says there weren't a lot of mixed race roles before Suits. And this is the first time Emma looks genuinely surprised that she says that. And you can hear it in her voice. She doesn't believe her. And it's because we all lived around that time anyway.
As a female founder, you have to think, at that time, there were certainly not a lot of mixed race parts.
Really?
No.
Really?
She's skeptical. I can hear it in her voice. Emma is a black woman. She responds with just this absolute, in my opinion, I don't believe you, really. And Meghan was like, this was a different generation. This was a different generation. Emma and Meghan are the same age. I'm not too far off. The idea that she's trying to gaslight us and say that in 2011, there wasn't, there was basically nothing for women of mixed race. That's just a lie. That's a lie. I literally, after this, I opened up Google and I typed in shows from the 90s and the early 2000s, and she's not being honest about that. But anyway, she's saying roles were only for blue-eyed, blonde-haired girls. Again, yet she said she was cast. So like I said, it's another moment where Meghan's version of the truth doesn't quite land, and this is verifiable. You can check it yourself. From there, Meghan launches into one of her favorite topics, as a mother, as a mom. And once again, it's wrapped in language that implies she deserves extra credit for doing the bare minimum. She says, I make time for my children, as if that's some exceptional achievement. Again, I don't know any mother who doesn't make time for their children. What is she on about? And she's done this before. Remember when she said Archie was sick? This was on one of the podcasts. Archie was sick and she had meetings lined up, but she chose to stay home and comfort him, or stay up all night before her meetings and comfort him, or stay in his bedroom or whatever. And again, that's not headline worthy. This is called parenting. That is parenting. Your child is sick. You comfort him or her. You stay with them. You sleep in their bed or they sleep in yours. Whatever works for you and your family. But that is 101 parenting. How is this some... Did you know my son was sick? And I paid attention. I even gave him medication. Can you believe that, guys? I stretch myself so much. It's what mothers do, and fathers too. Meghan often speaks about motherhood like it's a brand extension, something to be performed for the public, I would argue. That's how it comes across. It's like she's doing this for the public. She uses phrases like, I make time. The way someone might say, I launched a startup. It's completely detached. It's so detached. It's so rehearsed. It's so strange. I've said this so many times in my reviews of her podcast because she mentioned motherhood so much. Meghan talks about motherhood in the strangest ways. I swear to you, it is so strange. I do not know anyone who talks about their kids the way Meghan does, as if it's an extra thing that she chose to do. And it's weird. In Meghan's world, to me, in my opinion, motherhood becomes part of this optic. And instead of genuinely showing some kind of... That's the one thing she could kind of relate to people about if she were honest about it, or just talked about it like a human being, or even just relatable chaos. Or she frames basic decisions like comforting a sick child or preparing lunch, whatever, doing basic things that you would do for your kids every day as these moments of heroic sacrifice. But like I said, most mothers aren't looking for applause. They're just doing their job and they love it. They love their kids. It's not even did you know my son was sick and I comforted him, huh? Where's my applause? So moving on, at one point Meghan drops the line, relationships matter. And honestly, coming from her, that's almost comedic. This is a woman who has cut off her father, her siblings, her in-laws, her former best friend, Jessica Mulroney, and allegedly cycled through multiple staffers like it's a revolving door. So yes, relationships do matter, Meghan. But just maybe not to her. Again, Meghan is spouting things she doesn't seem to live at all. Emma then asks if Meghan misses acting. Meghan says she does, sometimes. But what she really misses is, and listen to the words of this, my crew. And that one little phrase is so revealing. Not the crew, my crew. Meghan speaks about people as if they belong to her. She even said earlier in the episode, words matter. And she's right. So when she frames former co-workers on Suits as her personal property, it reveals the superiority complex just underneath the surface, in my opinion. Then she drops a strange anecdote. She says that she didn't, so again, kind of slightly throwing shade towards the royal family, in my opinion. She didn't get to say goodbye to the Suits crew when she left because everything was such a secret. But why? Meghan, that's just bullcrap. She said she couldn't. She could have easily had a private farewell. There's no reason she couldn't have done that. She was doing interviews with Vanity Fair revealing her relationship in 2017 to the world. Why not just shut your mouth, enjoy your privacy, and have a goodbye dinner, a phone call even, a thank you text, something. Yet instead, she says literally, hello to them through the camera as if they're watching her. Hello to everyone who knows me, as we'd say in Ireland if you're on TV. I'd like to say a big hello to everyone who knows me. Anyway, and she's acting as if they're all sitting around listening to her on this podcast. It's so strange. These people have jobs and lives. You know what I mean? The crew from Suits are not, they're fellow actors, they're also production assistants. They're not sitting around listening to Meghan Markle. And when Emma says, she asks her something, and maybe I think she says they were like family, right? Or maybe Meghan says they were family. But either way, Meghan alludes that they were like her family. And my question is, if they were family or like your family, why wouldn't you say goodbye? Well, actually, yes, we've seen how Meghan treats her family. So that answers that question. Later, Emma asks a pointed question, and this is perhaps the most interesting, revealing, and narcissistic part of the podcast episode. She says, if you could rewrite your public narrative, would you do anything differently? And Meghan, without skipping a beat, says, yes, I would ask people to tell the truth. That response tells you everything. Meghan, a woman who has been publicly caught out in multiple lies, most infamously during the Oprah interview, still believes the problem is other people. You. The problem is you. It's not my lies. It's not my vengefulness. It's not my deceit. It's you. Not her. Not her choices. Not her inconsistencies. Just the world's failure to reflect her truth back to her. It is so delusional, and it shows zero growth. Meghan earlier talked about failure and there is no failure. There's no such thing as failure because you learn from everything. You obviously haven't. And that answer reveals so much. And then, in a bizarre turn, Meghan starts asking Gemma her star sign and derails the momentum of the conversation entirely. But whatever. There is an interesting point that connects to this. Well, no, I'll say it now since it connects to it, but it happens later on. The next part is even more confusing because Meghan recalls Serena Williams saying, a lie can't live forever. And then she follows up, 8 years is a long time. Meghan, what lie is she referring to? Meghan never specifies what she's talking about. What lie? People telling what truth? What are you talking about? She's so vague. She's not a truth teller. She's a gaslighter, in my opinion. And even if she's talking about the rumors of bullying, one can only assume she's talking about the rumors of bullying or her emotional manipulation, her alleged emotional manipulation, or being caught out in many, many falsehoods, then sorry, but the truth is what's been happening. I mean, people have caught you out. How can you turn around and say to the public that they should tell the truth when you were on Oprah and major details began unraveling after you lied? Especially about the titles. Well, that didn't take very long for the truth to come out. Maybe 6 months to a year, especially when the Queen died and Archie received his title, like he was always going to. So Serena's right. A lie can't live forever. You're saying 8 years is a long time and it's still persisting. So I would argue that is a sign that what is being said is true. It's true. And unless you specify what you're talking about, you look so silly saying what you said on this podcast. You are going to piss more people off with that, because what people are looking from you is accountability. The one thing you preached, you and Harry, just be honest, take accountability. I messed up. I was angry. I acted out of emotion. I said some things that weren't true. Say that. And not everybody will forgive you, but I guarantee a lot more than what you're doing now in the way that you're doing it. You're just going about this all wrong. And you know what, later on, so moving on from that, because Meghan's rewriting of history is just absolutely unappealing, and it just when you thought you couldn't dislike her anymore, she has a magical way of making her even more unlikable. But anyway, she pivots later on and she says the sentence, I would tell anyone it's okay to put up boundaries. Clearly, she's justifying her own behavior here, in my opinion, cutting people off, isolating herself, and allegedly creating toxic work environments under the guise of self-preservation. But let's rewind to the tiara scandal before the wedding. When the Queen's dresser, Angela Kelly, tried to enforce boundaries around protocol and access to royal jewels, allegedly Meghan didn't respect them, nor Harry. Instead, Prince Harry allegedly screamed, what Meghan wants, Meghan gets. So Meghan doesn't have an issue with boundaries when she puts them, but she does seem to have an issue when anyone else puts boundaries on her. Again, she needs to stop doing these kind of interviews. It reveals a lot about her, and not good things. Continuing on, Meghan once again trots out the word authentic, another buzzword in her growing collection. She claims she doesn't believe in being overly rehearsed or relying on talking points. And honestly, that might be the biggest load of pure fluff we've heard so far. Literally, Meghan says that there's no point of being inauthentic and, having rehearsed talking points. Because if you've watched any of Meghan's interviews, even most recently, Time 100 Summit, or listened to her Jamie Carlima podcast appearance, it was nothing but talking points, rehearsed lines, repeated buzzwords, packaged vulnerability. Meghan doesn't do off the cuff. She does curated. It's so disingenuous and it's so exhausting to watch. This is why Meghan is so unlikable. She's not a truth teller. She gives decent advice, sure, but the issue is she never actually lives it. She performs authenticity without ever embodying it or tries to perform it. Case in point, her now infamous baby mama dance video in the hospital. She thinks that was her being relatable, authentic. But really, it came across like everything else she does, staged, performative, and curated for headlines. Because even when Emma asks about authenticity, she goes, of course I'm authentic, essentially. Didn't you see my baby mama video? Stop. At this point, Meghan is starting to feel like an empty vessel, even more than I thought it was possible. A rotating carousel of quotes, of aesthetics, of Pinterest board advice, none of which stick because there's no real substance holding it all together. Then we get the part where she really gives the game away. Meghan starts talking about social media and her face genuinely lights up. I've never seen Meghan so happy. So happy. I'm going to put it in here.
You have to be authentic.
Just be authentic. Did you see my baby mama dance?
I mean, stop it. First of all, you've really embraced social media. Do you enjoy it or does it feel like a bit of a drag?
She lets out this huge, over-the-top, touching her belly, leaning back, huge smile, like someone who's just got handed a camera and a mirror at the same time. And it is so revealing because we all know narcissists love social media. And I believe, in my opinion, Meghan is narcissistic. They love the attention. They love the control. They love the ability to curate perception, even if the public have caught on. And in that moment, Meghan isn't trying to hide it. She loves the platform because it puts her back in the spotlight, unedited and uninterrupted. Well, I mean, she edits herself, I imagine. But she then says, she says she's getting her voice back. She needs to stop. It's just laughable. It's laughable because she's been out of the royal family for 5 years. She's had 2 podcasts, a Spotify deal, a Netflix contract, making content, a Lemonada contract, a lifestyle brand, multiple interviews, docuseries. But now apparently it's Instagram that finally gives her her voice back. Give me a break. The real irony, just minutes earlier, she was dismissing rehearsed content and buzzwords. And now she's circling back to the exact same talking points she repeated for years. I got my voice back. I lost my voice. It's like watching someone trying to break free from their script while unknowingly reading it the whole time. In case we hadn't heard it the first time, Meghan circles back again to say she's now empowered with her voice. And let's be honest, we know exactly who she's alluding to. She can't help but take a veiled jab, in my opinion, at the royal family every time she speaks. It's like a reflex at this point. And she wants us to believe that during her time as a royal, she was silenced. Were you silent or were you silenced?
I mean, that's the sad irony of the last 4 years is I've advocated for so long for women to use their voice. And then I was silent.
Were you silent or were you silenced?
The latter.
But let's take a moment to remember the reality. Meghan did speak. Meghan spoke a lot while she was working in the royal family. She spoke on women's issues, the Me Too movement, Time's Up movement, topics the royal family traditionally stays away from. And what did they do? They let her speak. They made space for her. They were gracious. And how did she return the favour? She left and accused them of horrible things that were revealed to be untrue because Harry admitted that they never said it and it wasn't true. They accused them of cruelty, neglect. I mean, it's crazy. She wasn't silenced. She was supported. She just didn't get the control narrative 100%. And that, more than anything, is what she couldn't tolerate, in my opinion. The podcast then shifts to talk about Archewell, her and Harry's foundation, that is quite suspicious at this point, in my opinion. Meghan talks about what kind of content they wanted to create and how she's building a brand and a business. She throws out yet another classic Meghan phrase, is it value aligned? But she never actually defines what those values are. Never once, even when Emma asks her 2 separate times, what are your principles? What are your guiding principles? She never defines them. She doesn't define her values. And like I said, Emma says, what are your guiding principles? And Meghan gives us nothing. No clear answer, no core beliefs. Because here's the truth, in my opinion. Meghan doesn't have any. She uses the language of values without ever living values. She's all style, no substance, all branding, no foundation, and you can't be values driven when no one, including yourself, knows what those values are. And that's the final takeaway here. Meghan Markle speaks in circles, buzzwords, curated platitudes, but when you really listen, when you really peel back the aesthetics, what is left is hollow emptiness. Also, the more I talk about this, I can feel myself get worked up. I swear, You mention Meghan Markle and I just transform. And just when you think Meghan is done with the buzzword parade, she drops another one. Financial literacy is so important for young women. And sure, on the surface, that's true, but it's also wildly tone deaf, coming from someone whose wealth didn't come from building a business or pulling herself up financially. It came from marrying into one of the richest and most powerful families in the world. Financial literacy is important for everyone, not just young women. But Meghan's attempt to position herself as a relatable mentor completely falls apart, especially when you consider the source. She talks about investments and real capital, and this I don't have monopoly money, this isn't monopoly money, and the need to trust people to bring a dream to life responsibly. When she's investing, she needs people to be responsible and to bring the dream to life. And yet, let's push that back on Meghan. How responsible has Meghan really been with the people who invested in her? Let's take Spotify, for example. They invested originally $20 million in her and Harry. They signed a 5-year deal. They made just 13 episodes in that 5-year deal. And I know the deal was cut short, but because of productivity, a lack of it. And then they decided, she reportedly said, it was mutual. No, you were fired. Let's not rewrite history. That's not responsible. That's not anything else but opportunistic. So the fact that Meghan's here, when I invest, I need to know people are responsible and they can bring a vision to life. You cashed in on your husband's name, delivering the bare minimum and then pointing fingers when it fell apart. So when Meghan speaks about trusting people with capital and being responsible for delivering on a dream, maybe she should look in the mirror first. Look at Netflix. Disaster, disaster, disaster. The only reason, in my opinion, that deal is still going is because she's friends with Ted. Because if she wants to talk about the importance of financial responsibility, she might want to start by demonstrating it. And honestly, how does any of this help a working girl from South Africa or Australia or the Bronx, wherever? It doesn't matter geographically. Pick the location you want. How does talking about capital and investments empower someone struggling to afford groceries? If she truly cared about financial literacy, she would use her platform to educate, not just brand herself as someone who gets it. Don't the people realize that I didn't always live like this? Is a direct quote from Meghan to E-News, or to, not E-News, to the New York Times or the New York Post. She's just so deluded. So we're finally getting there. There's about 3 more sections that I have to get through. You're doing well if you've lasted this long. I don't know if I should have done a 2-parter, but here we are. The episode is coming towards the end, and Meghan says something that ironically might be the most honest thing she has said so far. Everything I'm working on right now is an extension of me and my values. And considering how much of her content and products have been criticised for being shallow, hollow, and ultimately unimpressive, I think she's telling the truth. Because Meghan does come across that way, to me. Shallow branding without depth, glossy marketing without real meaning, and a constant obsession with buzzwords that rarely match her actions. Then she brings up Confessions of a Female Founder, her latest podcast, and calls it fun. As someone who listened to almost all episodes, I couldn't do the whole thing, but I think I listened to a good 6, and I believe I reviewed 5 of them. It was just unbearable listening to that podcast. I can confidently say that it wasn't fun. It was stiff, it was bland, and it felt like yet another Meghan Markle vehicle to talk about herself under this guise of celebrating women, compared to Emma's show, which is engaging, grounded, genuinely entertaining, and also interviews men, which we'll get to later because she says something that definitely prods at Meghan, and I loved it. But Confessions of a Female Founder fell flat. Meghan claims the podcast was perfect for people to go through the twists and turns with me of her journey. But that's absolute nonsense. That's gobbledygook, because I listened to the podcast. There was no vulnerability, no relatability, no real journey. Instead, what we were watching in real time and reports through the media and the press and what we saw really happening, she never reported in her podcast. The name change, she said it was because it was a word salad. She never mentioned she had legal problems with getting it trademarked. So she's a bullshitter. Absolute bullshitter. She dropped these disconnected anecdotes just like this. Meghan on this podcast is, although better than her own podcast, it was the similar thing. She just gave these curated life lessons that she doesn't follow, in my opinion. She offered nothing that made listeners feel like they were part of anything. She interviewed wealthy women who have a gripe with the world and act like they're victims when they're not at all. They live in the 1%. And it's just poor me, I'm a millionaire. Yeah. The only mildly honest moment was when she acknowledged her company's name change. Like I said, but even that was a lie, because she wasn't she didn't even go into the truth about that. It was just empty talk dressed up as something else. Then she says that there is a demand and desire for another season of her podcast, but she needs to focus on her business. Translation: the podcast flopped. That's what I hear. That's what I understand. It didn't chart, allegedly. It didn't trend. It got poor reviews. It barely made a cultural dent. There was no real demand that I can see, and Meghan knows it, which is why this comment feels like a pre-spun excuse for why she's walking away. For someone who doesn't believe in talking points, this seems rehearsed. The funniest part is, Emma clearly didn't even listen to Meghan's show. She didn't know how many episodes were aired. She didn't know that Tina Knowles was a guest. So if confessions were truly this cultural phenomenon to get a new, or to have so much demand for a second show, wouldn't a fellow podcaster have at least been familiar with some of the episode lineups? Emma doesn't challenge her, but her tone says it all. She just repeats Meghan's words and mutters the most unconvincing nice. And that nice carries the energy we are all feeling. None of this adds up. Because think about it this way. If things are really going well, your business has sold out, your podcast has crushed it, and according to you, there is demand for both, why are you pausing everything? Why are you walking away from it all if it's so successful? Why walk away at the peak? Simple, there was no peak, in my opinion. Just another carefully packaged delusion, slowly unraveling. And Meghan's not being honest about this, in my opinion. Okay, now we get into the next part. Meghan once again dives into her favourite talking points, being a working mother, as a mom, a working mom. And honestly, it's getting exhausting. She did this in her own podcast. She always talks about being a working mom. And the way she talks about working motherhood is not just patronising, it's sexist. There are working dads too. And let's not forget, being a stay-at-home parent is also work. But Meghan never frames it that way. It's always this self-congratulatory tone, like she's the first person to ever juggle family and a job. It's performative, it's insulting. She shares that she volunteers to serve lunch at her children's school, which I personally don't believe. And it sounds another, give me a gold star moment. And Emma, refreshingly real, says that, oh, now you're making me start to feel bad. And Meghan chirps, you can start to volunteer. And Emma shuts down, no, I don't want to. And that's what makes Emma so relatable. She's honest, she's grounded, she doesn't feel the need to play perfect. Meghan, on the other hand, constantly does. She has to be perfect. And she has the audacity to tell you that she's out of the prove it game, which she mentions 2 times in this podcast. Again, then they talk about lunchboxes. Emma says that she doesn't do them, but she does see like how they're prepared or whatever, or what goes in them. And Meghan claims she loves it. And Emma calls her out again. She goes, stop it, Meghan. No, you don't. And Meghan says that she comes downstairs with a glass of wine to prepare the lunchboxes, which, to be honest, I do believe her, because alcohol was a constant feature in With Love Meghan. So according to Meghan, that, you drink early in Montecito. Then there's Meghan's odd refusal to name Harry. This isn't the first time, but she only refers to him as my husband. Meghan, the only reason we know you is because of your husband. So the fact that you won't even name him is very revealing to me. She will not say Harry. Everyone knows Harry. People have known Harry since he was a child. The world knows Harry. And yet you talk about my husband. He wants to remain private, so I won't even say his name. It's distancing. It's oddly formal, especially when she talks about being committed to her family. She literally uses the phrase, I'm committed to my family. Who isn't? Who has young children and 2 small children and say, I'm committed to my family? Are you in a contract to your family? What is going on? Next, she claims her jam won blind taste competitions, something like that. Okay, Meghan, put it in an actual blind test and let's see. If I can find it, I'm gonna insert the blind test that I found here and let's see if As Ever won, because from my memory, it didn't.
I don't know, is that jam?
Ew. It's wet.
It's so bitter. Hi, I'm with the Daily Mail, and we're here to see if Meghan Markle's jam compares with some popular brands. Let's get into it.
It's very sweet.
Very, very sugary.
It's pretty good. Yeah, I could throw that on some toast.
I've overheard Meghan's is not as sweet, it's a bit watery. I'd say that is not Meghan's. Oh, it's already different. It's it smells like earthy. Whoa.
Doesn't even smell very good.
Tart, sweet, seedy. A little bit on the runnier side to me.
It's kind of sour. Tastes kind of like, I don't know. It tastes gross though.
It just kind of tastes like syrup. Like you'd put it on a McDonald's sundae.
It's barely even jam. It's more of like a no sugar sauce.
Do you like it?
It's pretty good.
Yeah, like, this is jam. Like, why? This is chunky, like the first one.
That's somewhere in the middle.
Like when you can actually feel strawberries.
$14 now. I would not.
I'm not a fan.
No. It was good, but $14 worth.
Meghan's jam just lacks a lot of structural integrity. It's got kind of the je ne sais quoi of a jam, but it doesn't quite get.
She also says she made the jam in her own kitchen, which is highly unlikely. I am pretty sure. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You cannot legally mass produce food for commercial sale from a private kitchen. I imagine in the States, neither. What? Maybe these are European laws. I'm not sure. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. It's a health and safety thing. You can't. If you're living on the property, you cannot mass produce food from that same property. For example, if you have animals in your house or whatever it might be, you cannot mass produce products and sell them from your kitchen. So I don't know what she's talking about. There is footage of Meghan's spread being produced from a factory. Well, I don't know why she's saying she made it from her kitchen. I don't get it. I really don't understand the inconsistency in the story here. If I'm mistaken, please correct me, because this isn't about taking Meghan down. Maybe I'm wrong. But A, I just don't believe you can mass produce from your kitchen. Correct me, please, Americans in the comments. Let me know if I'm wrong. And second, am I the only one going crazy? Didn't you all see the clip from my previous videos where as ever was produced in these, what I can assume is a factory? You'll let me know. Okay, Meghan starts, like I mentioned before, she mentions that she's not in the prove it game, but we need to rewind. This is the same episode where she talked about blind taste tests, selling out her jam, showing up for her kids, doing lunch boxes. Well, she's the voice behind everything. She is, without a doubt, still in the prove game. Look at her latest post on social media. And what's worse, just earlier in this interview, she criticized people who use talking points, yet she ends the podcast, or towards the end of the podcast, starts repeating her own talking points, word for word. Guys, we are getting there. You're doing so well for hanging in. So let's get to it. Let's get to one of the final parts. Coming towards the end, Meghan proudly declares that she is very financially responsible. And on the surface, sure, maybe she is. Who knows? I don't live with her. But once again, the receipts tell a much different story from previously in her life. I'm going to explain what I mean. When Meghan was part of the royal family, she was reportedly wearing gowns with price tags well into six figures, allegedly. According to public reports and books like Revenge by Tom Bower, some of her wardrobe choices, like the infamous $100,000 plus dress that she wore in, I can't remember, I'm going to put a picture, but it's that horrible cream dress. But allegedly that was over $100,000. She also wore a really expensive engagement dress, which again, I'll put all the photos in here, but these were really expensive dresses. They raised more than a few eyebrows because the royal family is well aware that the taxpayers fund their lifestyle, so they are not extravagant when it comes to their visits and things like that. Trooping of the Colour, yes, it's a different story. It's an event, it's a celebration. There's also a story, sorry, it's just come to my mind now, so I hope I'm not flip-flopping too much, but it's connected. According to Revenge by Tom Bower, at Harry and Meghan's wedding, if my memory serves me well, King Charles sees this huge display of fireworks and says, allegedly, "Wow, beautiful. Who's footing the bill for this?" And Harry replied, "You, Pa." So yes, Meghan might be financially responsible with her own money, but in my opinion, she's clearly very comfortable spending other people's. The pattern stretches back even further, because according to Revenge, that same book, which I should probably link the book to, I mention it so much that I need to start linking it to the video so you can buy it and read it for yourself, because it's really good. I really recommend it. Meghan spent the better part of 2004 to 2011 allegedly living off her first husband, Trevor Ingelson, who again allegedly paid for everything from her rent to her lifestyle. Then finally she got her steady role on Suits, and this was the first time she was financially independent, and allegedly that's why she left Trevor, because she finally had enough money. She was earning, she had a stable job after years of not really working or not having a stable job, and she left him right after. I mean, she left him, she went to Toronto the same year, and a couple of years later they divorced. So again, look at that. And then just 5 years later, after getting the job on Suits, or 2 years after her divorce, 3 years after her divorce, she met Prince Harry, and he's part of one of the richest families in the world. So once again, you could argue she lived off of them. They gave her a house, they gave her transport, they gave her food. And before all of that, before Trevor, before Harry, she, according to Revenge, lived off her father. Thomas Markle allegedly paid for her private schooling, her car, her university, her early lifestyle. So when Meghan talks about financial literacy and responsibility, we have to ask, whose finances has she actually been responsible for? Because her track record seems to show that she's always had someone else footing the bill. Even now, Netflix has paid her handsomely, according to reports, despite lackluster results. From the outside, it appears she's been paid millions for a couple of documentaries, half-baked podcast, struggling lifestyle brand, and that's not exactly the hustle story she's trying to sell. So let's not ignore the growing speculation around this structure of her and Harry's business ventures. Their charity and companies are registered in Delaware, allegedly, which is a US state known for its, how will I phrase this, opaque financial laws, I guess you could say, and favorable tax treatment, from what I've heard. Critics and commentators both have long raised concerns about how little transparency there is around how donations are received and how funds are distributed. It is maybe all perfectly legal, perhaps, but the optics are not great. Even right now, allegedly, there's an investigation of why Harry and Meghan made a donation of, I believe, around the ballpark figure of $250,000 to Joe Biden's daughter. Some, although this is speculation, have claimed that it could have been to sway political parties and get in with them politically, etc. So yes, getting back to finances, Meghan might see herself as financially savvy. To many of us, she simply looks like someone who's very good at spending other people's money. Finally, we are getting towards the end of the podcast. Meghan is asked what she's most proud of in her career. And without missing a beat, she says, investing in myself. So it is the most Meghan answer imaginable. Cue the narcissism. A moment that could have been about collaboration, growth, impact, somehow becomes another mirror moment. Look at me. She's then asked what surprised her most about herself. And this time the answer is, well, I should tell her answer first and then tell you my opinion. Her answer is that I can bounce back pretty easily. And I want to be fair, and I want to give credit where credit is due. She's not wrong. Meghan does bounce back. And look, she's been accused of all kinds of behavior. Bullying, lying, manipulation. And to be honest, we've seen a lot of it. Well, what I mean is we've seen in the Oprah interview a lot of vengefulness. We've seen the lies. In my opinion, we've seen manipulation. The bullying is still alleged, but there's too many reports to ignore it. The expose in Vanity Fair, they never ever sued them for that. So one can only assume that it's true. Otherwise, this litigious couple would have sued the hell out of Vanity Fair for publishing falsehoods or lies about them. Saying all that, she keeps resurfacing with new projects, with new PR spins. I'm not saying it's positive, but depending how you look at it, it's either delusion or narcissism or straight up resilience. There's different ways to look at it. I know what I think. The conversation turns to Oprah, and Emma wants a redo of the meeting after an awkward first meeting. Basically, she was really excited to meet Oprah. She had sweaty hands and sunglasses, whatever. And Meghan graciously offers, come up to Montecito and we'll plan a lunch. But then I'm left asking, why didn't you go to Gail's 70th birthday that Oprah planned? If you're that close, if you can just tell her to, come up to Montecito and you'll all plan a lunch. Since the Oprah interview, please, again, correct me if I'm wrong. Since the Oprah interview, I publicly haven't seen any real connection between Oprah and Meghan. To me, in my opinion, it seems that Oprah pulled away after what I believe is a realization of we just basically slandered people. That's what it came across as, the Oprah interview. It wasn't truthful and it wasn't fair journalism. So they're my opinions. Then let me just look at my notes. Emma asks Meghan who she admires. And this is interesting. And here we go again. There's a pause, a struggle. And finally, because Emma has to ask almost everything 2 times with Meghan. Meghan says she really struggles to answer this. And it's not the first time that she gets really weird when people ask her about someone she wants on her podcast or someone she wants on with Love Meghan or who she admires. Eventually, she splutters out, there's too many to count. It's a classic non-answer, and honestly, it tracks because, to me, in my opinion, Meghan doesn't like to admit admiration. It implies someone else might be ahead of her or something. Again, I'm speculating, but she had a similarly, well, anyway, she had an awkward moment at the Time 100 summit with that terrible interviewer. Meghan, you are a CEO and there's a lot of glam.
You're CEO. There's a lot of glam, but we know there's a lot of grit and grind. How do you care for yourself?
She was just the worst interviewer, I have to be honest. It was just terrible. But anyway, she was asked by that same terrible interviewer, the blonde lady, who she wanted to have a guest on her show. And Meghan literally said something like, I've had everybody I want. Okay, well then that's a wrap then. It's not humility, it's deflection. To me, it comes across, it's like her way of saying, I'm already complete. You think I need someone? I don't need anyone. I've already grifted my way into the royal family. I don't need anyone else, thank you. Finally, Emma asks her about her future goals, and Meghan says she doesn't have a 10-year plan. Just scale my business, and my goal is what comes after that. Her answer doesn't really make sense. Apart from the scaling the business does, but what comes after that isn't an answer. What you have to be specific. It's a strange answer.
Looking ahead, what audacious goal do you have that you are like looking forward to and is like on your mind right now?
Oh, goodness. The scale of this business. I don't know if that's an audacious goal. Is it audacious?
Yeah, I think so.
I'll take that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll take that.
And then what comes after that?
I mean, what comes after that is not a goal in itself. It's a blank space. You have to decide what comes after that. That's the goal. It's like a shrug wrapped in a sentence. And that's where the podcast ends. And it's a perfect sum up. Once again, we've watched Meghan Markle perform a version of herself. Contradictory, disingenuous, image obsessed, but dressed well. I have to say, I like her outfit. And speaking of her outfit, I don't know if I described it, but it's this kind of navy blue suit with black high heels. I really liked Emma's outfit too, the white. They both look good. They really do. At the end, look, I loved the interviewer. I love this Emma girl. I really thought she was thoughtful. She was composed. She was real. She was so much better than Jamie Kern-Lima. So much better than the blonde lady at the Time 100 summit. It was a complete contrast to the performance sitting across from her. So what did we really learn from Meghan Markle's Aspire interview? Well, to sum it up in 2 words, not much. What we saw was another installment in the Meghan Markle's PR tour, and look, beautifully lit. I can't speak today. I don't know what's wrong with my adverbs. Beautifully lit, carefully worded, fundamentally hollow. She talks about values, but never defines them. She speaks of empowerment while dodging accountability. She sells jams and flower sprinkles as if they are revolutionary. And somehow she always manages to be the hero or the victim and the genius behind every move. But this time it took an even uglier turn by, I would argue, gaslighting the public. And yet beneath this branding and the curated anecdotes, did you guys know that I used to work in an antique store and a yogurt shop? And I used to be a babysitter and I used to sell scrunchies. And I mean, apart from all this like stuff that I simply don't believe and the endless buzzwords, what's most telling to me and what's missing is honesty, humility, and any real sense of reflection. Meghan talks about failure. There is no failure because you learn from everything, and she doesn't seem to learn from anything, because instead of even admitting that she was wrong for doing the Oprah interview, especially about Archie's title, and that words matter, in her own words, it's a direct quote, she takes no accountability. And she becomes even more and more unlikable the more she talks. I think the only solution for Meghan is to be honest. And if you're not going to be honest, stop doing these podcasts. Because you're turning even uglier. And I don't mean physically. Your behaviour is uglier. And saying that 8 years of a lie. If it's been 8 years, it's the truth. Let's be honest. Too many eyes are on your story for a lie to continue in 8 years. The truth comes out. And you just don't seem to like it. These are my opinions. It wasn't a conversation. It was a performance once again. And one we've all seen before. This time a little bit uglier. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review. Let me know what you thought of the podcast. Did you find it revealing? Did you find it interesting? Or do you think it's the same recycled crap that Meghan always says? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for listening. Bye.